If you've ever felt just buried under an avalanche of digital rules, you are definitely not alone. The European Union has one of the most comprehensive digital rulebooks in the world, but, well, it's gotten a bit messy. So today, we are diving into the Digital Omnibus proposal. This is the EU's ambitious plan to take a giant broom to its own tech laws. Let's see what this big cleanup is all about. And that really is the central question, isn't it? I mean, for businesses trying to innovate and for everyday citizens just trying to understand their rights, a super complex web of laws can be a huge barrier. This whole proposal is the EU's direct answer to that exact problem. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll kick things off with why this digital spring clean is even happening. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the changes for data, those cookie pop-ups, and cybersecurity. We'll also see which old laws are getting tossed out and wrap up with what this all means for Europe's digital future. Okay, first up, why the massive overhaul and why now? Well, it all comes down to staying competitive in a world that is, moving incredibly fast. You don't have to take my word for it. This quote from the European Commission really gets to the heart of the issue. While all these rules were put in place with good intentions, the sheer volume of them has started to slow things down, creating some real hurdles for businesses and innovators. So the crucial point here is that this isn't about lowering standards, not at all. It's about being smarter. The goals are crystal clear. Cut the red tape, make the rules easier to actually understand, get rid of obsolete and overlapping laws, and ultimately make the EU a more attractive place to build and grow a digital business, all while keeping that famous EU gold standard for protection. All right, let's get into our second section, smarter rules for data. Instead of starting from scratch, the Omnibus is making some really targeted tweaks to some of the biggest names in data law, including the Data Act and, yes, even GDPR. It's all about a careful balancing act. These changes to the Data Act are designed to make data sharing easier, but not at the cost of security. This means stronger protections for trade secrets, less bureaucracy for specialized cloud services, and much clearer rules for new tech like smart contracts. And, this is important, more support is being extended to a wider range of businesses. And that brings us to a key new term, the SMC, or Small Mid-Cap Company. The EU is basically recognizing that it's not just tiny businesses that need a hand. Slightly larger, growing companies also struggle with these complex rules, so they're extending some of the compliance breaks to them as well. The idea is to help them scale without getting crushed by red tape. Now, here is a perfect example of the kind of practical simplification we're talking about. Before, businesses could be asked to share their data with governments based on a very broad, kind of vague concept of exceptional need. Now, that's being narrowed down to cover only clearly defined public emergencies. For companies, that provides a huge increase in legal certainty. And yep, even the mighty GDPR is getting a tune-up. It's not a total rewrite, don't worry, but the proposal aims to make life easier for smaller organizations that are just dealing with low-risk data. It also provides some much-needed clarity on how data can be used to train AI models, which is absolutely critical for fostering innovation right here in Europe. It gives developers clearer guardrails to work within. All right, let's talk about something we can all relate to, the endless, maddening tyranny of the cookie pop-up. Well, the Digital Omnibus has a plan to make the internet just a little bit less annoying. The plan has three parts. First, they're going to bring the rules for cookies that handle personal data fully under the GDPR. That way, there's one consistent framework. Second, they want to get rid of consent banners for low-risk, common-sense stuff, like just measuring website traffic. And third, and this is the big one, they're paving the way for a future where you can set your privacy preferences once in your browser settings, and websites will have to respect them automatically. Just think, no more clicking accept all a dozen times a day. Next up, we have a simplification that is going to be a huge relief for businesses, streamlining how they report cybersecurity incidents. So imagine your company suffers a data breach. Under the current system, that one single incident could force you to report to several different agencies under several different laws. You've got the Data Protection Authority, the Cybersecurity Agency, financial regulators. It's a mess. It's inefficient, and it costs a lot of time and money. The new approach is built on this really simple but powerful idea: report once, share many. This basically means a company reports an incident one time to one single place, and then the system takes care of getting that information to all the other relevant authorities. This is all going to be managed through a new single entry point developed by ENISA, which is the EU's cybersecurity agency. And this is not a minor change. It covers a huge range of critical laws,
from the broad NIS2 directive for network security to specific rules for finance like DORA, and even digital identity. For businesses, this is just a massive reduction in their administrative headaches.
You know, a proper spring clean isn't just about tidying things up. It's also about throwing out what you no longer need. And the Omnibus does exactly that.
So let's take the Platform to Business, or P2B regulation. Back in 2020, it was a pioneering law. But since then, the EU has passed the much bigger, much more powerful Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act. These newer laws have pretty much made the old P2B regulation redundant, so the proposal is simply to repeal it to avoid any confusion and duplication.
But it's not just about hitting the delete button on laws. In other cases, it's about smart consolidation. For instance, key parts of the Data Governance Act and the Open Data Directive are being folded directly into the main Data Act. This creates a single, more coherent rulebook, instead of forcing people to jump between a bunch of different laws to figure things out. So, when you put all these different pieces together, what's the big picture? What does this massive regulatory cleanup really mean for Europe? At its core, this is a really strategic move by the European Commission to streamline, simplify, and clarify. The whole goal is to cut the administrative burden, all that red tape that can stifle growth, without, and this is key, without sacrificing the high standards of privacy and security that the EU is so well known for. Ultimately, it is all about creating what the Commission is calling a simpler and faster Europe. By making the digital single market easier to navigate, the EU hopes to give a real boost to homegrown innovation and make the entire bloc more competitive on the global stage. And it's really important to remember, this isn't a one-and-done deal. The Digital Omnibus is explicitly being called the first step. This signals a much broader commitment from the EU to keep its rulebook modern, effective, and as simple as it can be moving forward. And so that leaves us with a big question. This entire effort is a really delicate balancing act. Can the EU truly simplify its complex digital world to spark new innovation, while at the same time maintaining its position as the global leader in digital rights and standards? I guess only time will tell.